very happy to have just one of the greatest young saxophone players on the planet today. He's one of my favorite players. And someone who's actually an alumni of UNO, spent a lot of time here and played with all kind of people from New Orleans. And we're going to do this kind of a little bit different. This is because this is sort of my class time. We're going to start as sort of a workshop. So we're going to play. He wants to play with people, and I thought there would be a good opportunity, maybe like to explore a little more of this transcription that Jason started doing, this Joshua Redmond transcription. So we're going to kind of start with playing and maybe kind of working on this tune. So we need a drummer, and we need a piano player, and Jason's going to play bass. And I'm sure it'll evolve into a question and answer kind of situation, maybe more of a clinic situation. He can tell us a little bit about what he's doing, and you know, I know we just released a CD, and I have some questions about that and stuff. You know. So anyway, how about a hand for Brice?
So the assignment is you were working. Everybody was working.
Yeah, part of the projects in this class. One of the main projects are Go ahead. I can't figure out how to turn it off.
It's on the right side.
I'm an Apple guy, I'm not a Zoom guy. Yeah, you know, the main projects of this class are to transcribe what we consider to be contemporary, unnotated pieces of music. In other words, stuff that you can't find in a fake book that you might want to play on a gig, which is, you know, of course, that's always historically been the way we do gigs. I mean, if I wanted to do a in the early days, if I wanted to do a Coltrane piece or whatever, and I couldn't find it, you know, I'd have to transcribe it from the, or try to, you know, imagine the lead sheet that he might have been looking at, or his band might have been looking at, or whatever. So that's the goal of these pieces. They're contemporary pieces that you can't find readily available. You can't download them or whatever, but they're great pieces, and we use those as a sort of a way to explore, you know, concepts of harmony and improvisation. Right. So they're basically interpretations. Right. We can only imagine what was on the original, the original score, you know, and these are, it's kind of like, I like to make an analogy of a painter, like painting the Mona Lisa or whatever. It's basically, it's not the original, it's sort of an interpretation of what the original is, you know. And sometimes, a piece like this, it's pretty clear, you know, some of the pieces are, you know, like we've had Bornet Cohen pieces and stuff like that. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what's melody and what's improvisation, things like that. But so that's the goal, and that's this piece of music that we have here is that.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much of that I have done in my life. And to be quite honest, I'd rather do it that way. I would rather learn a tune from a record, just because I've run across charts in checking them against the record, and changes are wrong, you know, melodies are wrong, you know, whatever. I would rather go to the original source, and I always tell my students to do that, go to the original source, which is the music, and transcribe it from there. And sometimes reluctantly, I have to do it for my wife, because she makes me do all that stuff. She's like, I want to do this tune, and I'm like, so transcribe it. She's like, it takes me too long, you do it. I'm like, okay, all right, you know, so I've done it so much, it's become a really kind of fast process for me, you know. And so, Steve, let me ask you, so when he did these were his changes?
Yeah, these were his changes, and I tried to, you know, they give me their best draft, you know, and then from there I just sort of correct the, you know, the changes, you know. Right. There was a lot of discrepancies on this one. He got, you know, 80% of it, and then, you know.
That's cool.
So the ones, you know, the ones that, I know it's kind of hard to read, but.
No,
you know, like I said, it's a draft. This is like the first working draft, but I think it's, you know, 90% correct now, you know.
So what do you guys do first? When you're going to transcribe a tune off a record, what do you guys do first?
Listen to it.
Okay, but what part do you learn first? What do you write down first? The melody? Cool. Then?
Start trying to figure out, usually just line and then
perfect. Good. And that's one thing that I noticed on this. Some of the roots of these chords that you had along in here were different. You know what I mean? They had this ostinato pedal happening, you know, and you had different roots happening through all that, and it's probably part of the chord that was sticking out to you or something like that.
Yeah, it's like kind of what was happening on top. And
and I didn't like the beat in the bass, but like I was trying to figure out what Goldberg was doing on top of it.
Right.
That's all.
Right. Yeah, getting the bass is like, you know, after the melody, the next most important thing. I mean, I tell my students to actually learn bass lines a lot of times because there's so much information in a bass line. I mean, I can't tell you how many gigs I've been on and someone calls a tune and I have no idea what the tune is, never played it or anything. The first thing I'm going to do after I hear the melody, I'm going to think about the form immediately. What's the form of this tune? And I might ask beforehand, but if I don't have the time to ask beforehand, the form is the #1 thing. So if I'm missing all kinds of changes and you know, I have no idea what's going on, at least I know where to stop, you know, so I'm not going to make a complete fool out of myself. But the first thing I'm going to be honing in on is the bass, because the bass, I mean, if it's kind of a standard-ish type tune, the bass player and the lines that he plays are going to outline pretty much the majority of what I need to know in order to learn that tune. And until you really learn bass lines, transcribe bass lines, and really tear them apart and figure out what they're doing, I mean, that's just an important process of understanding those bass lines, really transcribing them, understanding what they're doing, so that you can process that information in real time. And for me, that's one of the biggest purposes of transcribing, period, is to develop your ears enough to the point at which you're on the gig and you can process that information almost as immediately as possible, so that you can make adjustments, so that you can react to what someone is doing. You know, you might be on the gig and piano player goes here, and if you've transcribed something like that, or if you can hear that sound, you're able to immediately react to that sound and go with them, you know. Or if a bass player changes harmony, are you even in tune with that? Can you even hear that if he plays different changes, you know? That's why I love bass lines. Really transcribing them, tearing them apart so that you can understand when they're playing different changes, how do they play different changes, what kind of things do they focus on. How many of you guys can play bass lines on your instrument? Most of you guys? Kind of? I mean, even basic bass lines, you know, can really help in a lot of ways to be able to just walk bass lines through a song, you know. How well do you know changes to a song, you know? Can you walk through the changes and all that kind of thing?
So that's interesting. I don't want to interrupt you,
go ahead.
but pertaining to this piece again, he had some questions about the way the piano player, which is Aaron Goldberg, was playing these changes. Like, you know, on the solos, he was playing this as D flat sus. But it was, you know, it's like on the head of the tune, he's playing C#7, or I don't know, call it C#7 or whatever. But you know, and I think that was some of the confusion you were running into, is the fact that he was doing things certain ways that may, you know, I think he was taking liberties with what was there, you know, and the way he was voicing things, you know, and I think that was the confusion, is how to write. Do I write it down the way he's playing it on his solo? Because when he took a solo on this tune, it was, you know, he was all over the place. I mean, he was doing all really stretching, and he could do that because he's playing trio, you know. But when he played behind, you know, when he was comping behind Joshua Redman at the end of the solo, it got a little more like the lead sheet of the tune, you know. So, and those are the kind of things, to me, those are the hard things to try to do, to make those judgment calls like that, you know.
I'm glad you said that, because for me, when I'm learning a tune, especially something like this where it's got complex harmonies and they may do different stuff in the solo, I would want to check out that chord in every chorus and find out what is the consensus of that chord, you know? Like, listen to the beginning melody. Okay, he plays D flat sus, you know, on the melody in. What does he play on the melody out? You know, if you have a question about a chord like that, I would check out the melody in, check out the melody out, and see what he plays during the solo. Is it anything close to that? You know, if he's going away from that, then I would disregard that in terms of what the actual chord is, you know, and kind of come to a consensus of what that chord could possibly be. I mean, and sometimes it's really difficult. There's been some tunes where the recording is bad, or I don't know, just a certain thing might be really hard to hear. I'll just keep going from chorus to chorus to chorus, checking out that one chord. And sometimes it's just not clear, because maybe they weren't clear, you know? Maybe the bass player thought it was one thing, the piano player thought it was something else, and they never, it's possible they never even listened to each other and realized they were playing something different, you know? I mean, all kinds of possibilities exist. So in that situation, it's hard to tell what exactly that is, so then it becomes a judgment call on your part. Well, this sounds good as a da-da-da-da-da, you know, and you can write that in your part, you know? So,
and traditionally, you know, jazz lead sheets have always been sort of very kind of watered down and sort of very basic, with the idea that people would take liberties with things. You know, like a lot of things. You know, even rhythmically, sometimes, you know, what's written in a fake book, or the way you might interpret something in on a written page, it's just sort of taken as a given that someone's going to take that and do something with it. You know, and that's obviously what he was doing, like especially with the chords. I mean, he was definitely kind of going crazy. But
yeah,
should we
like,
try to play
like
this? You want
yeah,
to
sure. We can do that.
Can we get a band together? So we got Jason and Charles. You gonna play the piano? Charles. And who else? Who's taking the drums? Well, okay. Yeah, somebody got. Well, who played the other day? Who's in the class that was on the drums? Was it Sam? Sam, I played, because you kind of played the tune music. And I guess we can send you something.
Now, I got to talk about some of these changes for a second, because like, there were a number of years where Ed Simon, the piano player, was in Terrence's band, and we did a lot of playing together, and we would talk about chords a lot and how to actually notate the chords. Like something like, you know, slash chords, you know, like a D flat over F or something like that. That's really easy for a piano player or a guitar player to interpret, because it really means something immediately in terms of voicings for them. But in terms of horn, how many horn players do we have in here? Okay. So for me as a horn player, seeing those slash chords, there's like there's like a whole process of thought that needs to go into those slash chords. Some are easier than others, but I kind of like to see chords, or I like to write chords for myself that are root based. You know what I'm saying? So. So that I can make sense out of them quicker, and you know, some of those chords are easier done than others. Some chords you can't get away from slash chords because it's just too complicated to write out the chord another way. But I mean, my point about that is, you know, we as horn players kind of need to just put things in a way that makes sense to us in the quickest way possible, so we can get to the information that we have in our head or in our imagination, whatever it is, in the quickest way possible and meaningful. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
So normally what we do is when we get something like this for the first time, is we attempt to just sort of look over it, sort of play it through with the record first, and sort of check it and see what problems might arise. And you know, obviously, I mean, in terms of the changes, don't go with the ones that I scratched out, put the ones that I put at the bottom. But
okay.
Jason.
So you guys played this thing before?
Yeah, we tried to play it on Monday.
Okay.
catch that.
Yeah, I'm glad we waited to the end of the tune. I didn't hear that. Just out of curiosity, before we try to play this, does anybody see anything different on the page that you were hearing in the music?
I wanted to check out this one chord. And that's probably right, but I just need to check out the 7 on this chord.
Oh, okay. One of the other things I heard consistently, this is the thing that Jason.
Is that major?
Yeah, it should be major. It's C sharp major to E major.
Okay.
But one of the things that Jason pointed out and he put this in the chart, that when on the piano solo, the second chord of the tune is consistently on the solos he makes it a sus4 chord, but on the head of the tune it's a just a dominant 7 chord. And again, that's just his prerogative. I think that the more contemporary piano players tend to think about the chord scale that they're playing on, not necessarily the chord. And the other thing that I heard him do pretty, at least a few times, is on the end, on the vamp, is he was playing this kind of, and instead of going to the B, he would play that chord. So he definitely stretching. I mean, it was changing chords sometimes at the end. So well. But that's not something I would put into the chart. I'm just saying that's something I heard him do a couple of times. But he was doing like C over B instead it's like B add 9 over.
Yeah, it got thick there at the end.
Yeah.
But for me, I would love to go back and if I had the time to really pick it apart. Like for me, if I'm learning a tune like this, I want to understand every single note that everybody plays, and I just want to leave no stone unturned so that I understand the tune and the intention of whatever they wrote for them, the way they played it, So as, Aaron is soloing, I'm just like listening to every single note, how does it fit into this chord? I'm basically like transcribing it as he's doing it, you know what I'm saying? So is what he's playing lining up with the chords, you know what I mean? So to reinforce, basically I'm constantly reinforcing what am I looking at in front of me. And is it all lining up?
You want to try to give it a go?
Yeah, sure.
Here we go.
So you guys have an A out front?
Oh, that's right. You played the bass line up front. You cool, Charles? Yeah. Okay. All right. was thinking we just extend the ending, like, you know, just kind of make it short, but that's really great, man. Just first time seeing this. And the other guys too, man. You know, Charles has never played this before. It's got some really difficult changes in here, you know.
For sure.
So, man, one of the things that always really I found so impressive about your soloing when I hear you play is two things. I mean, you think developmentally, you know, which is, you know, something I'm trying to think about. Is that, you know, I don't do it like you do it, but and also you tend to think in terms of you know, the overall texture of a solo, like how you build a solo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, how do you think when you take a solo, other than the fact, you know, you're just looking at this tune for the first time and trying to make the changes and all that kind of stuff, but like generally, what's a good solo to you? If I can put the question out.
Wow, well, those are probably two different things.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of my approach to soloing, like on a subconscious level, that kind of got ingrained in me early, was my dad really made me listen to Cannonball early and learn his solos early, and I always loved the continuity of his solos and the shape of his solos. And I think that's probably one of my biggest arguments for learning whole solos as opposed to parts of solos, is learning to play a solo with continuity, learning a solo from someone who can play with continuity and playing that solo with him. And so I think that probably just got ingrained really early, the kind of continuity of his solo. So I'm definitely always trying to go for a continuity in what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about, and that's probably gotten developed more in the past few years of really following ideas. And now when I'm thinking about continuity, I mean, and following ideas, one of my heroes that I love to listen to for following ideas and composition inside the framework of a solo is Wayne Shorter, because he's so organic in the way that he plays and in the way that he'll take an idea, and he's such a thorough composer just through and through. Everything he does, I think, is composing skills on paper just automatically transfer to him as a player. So when I hear him play, it's just like, you know, one idea leads into the next so logically and so beautifully, and at the same time there's a certain amount of spontaneity in his playing. I never know what's going to happen. But it's also logical the way that everything fits together, and it's also organic the way that it fits together. It just feels like a free-flowing thought or series of thoughts, you know what I mean? So I'm definitely always aspiring to be that kind of a player. Or organic in the sense that I'm trying to follow my ideas and make things out of those and find new things. And at the same time open with my ears and my mind enough that I'm listening to things that the rhythm section is playing, that can give me input or help me find a different direction in what I'm playing. I might be in the middle of something, and you know, the piano player or even the bass player or drummer might play something, and I'll say, cool, wow, that's really interesting, let's explore that. And the cool thing about that I've found is I'll get into territory that I've never been in before. And I'm exploring an idea, a musical idea that I've never explored before. And it ends up being a solo that I've never played before and probably never will play again, you know. And so to me, that's when the real art of this music has the possibility of coming out, you know what I mean? The real sense of improvisation, the sense of spontaneity, and anything can happen, and let's explore new territory. That's kind of what I'm aspiring to at this point. You know, I don't know if that answers you.
Yeah, no, but I just noticed, like, when you were playing on this tune, I mean, maybe you could demonstrate a little bit, because you kind of latched onto a motive, and then you kind of instead of just playing the changes, you were playing the motive and trying to make it fit on the changes.
Right.
Can you demonstrate a little bit of that again? Or
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, that's
yeah,
cool.
let's play just from the top of the tune, you know, with the chords and everything.
So like I might find I guess I got kind of turned on to the idea of shapes from Mark Turner. I remember Mark Turner used to live here in town, and he always used to talk about shapes, and I never really, I talked to him briefly about it, but that dude is crazy. He's got so much amazing stuff happening in his head. But I mean, when you think about it, you can really get ideas on shapes for lines from anywhere. Like, I can look at the back of this room. I'm not crazy, I swear. So like, you can find shapes in, like, okay, so you see all these green doors back there and that window, you know what I mean? So like, you can start a line over here in the corner, and it goes up and then it goes down and it goes over, then it goes up and over and down, and then, you know what I'm saying? You can follow the shape of the doors, and like, you can make lines that correspond to the wall. You know what I'm saying? And that can be like a theme for you or something like that. This is just a random example. And so you can take that theme and figure out ways to manipulate that theme or that idea and have it adhere to the chord changes. Which that's a pretty complex one, you know. But I think in my solo I was playing some kind of simple motif.
Right.
And I was figuring out ways, how could I take this motif and make it work on the next change, and then the next change. And I'm like, okay, I want to move on from this. I want to take this somewhere else. So maybe I'll flip it over and play it upside down, or maybe take it somewhere else completely different, you know. And that's one reason I really want to get into composition more. You know, dealing with manipulations of ideas and how can you flip things around and retrograde them and invert them and all that kind of stuff. It really gives you, as an improviser, a whole range of possibilities of what to do with an idea, as opposed to, I learned this lick from Charlie Parker, it fits over this chord, and it has this shape, and that's it. You know, you're really limited with that kind of information on what you can do with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's play a little bit of the A section. Well, you know, just a few bars.
Sure.
Just take from the top and just stop wherever you want to stop.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's harder to do on the bridge. Right?
Yeah. That's why I stopped. Yeah, and that's the challenge. Like, when I'm practicing at home, like I might take a tune, just whatever tune, and I might come up with a shape and say, okay, you have to take this shape through this tune, no matter what the changes are or whatever. And I'll do it completely out of time so that I can actually figure things out and figure out, okay, how could I take this line through these chord changes? And if I can play it in time, cool. Then it forces me to really think really quickly. How can this move over here? How can this move over here? And I also, you know, Chris Potter really comes to mind in terms of the ability to manipulate ideas so quickly anywhere he wants. I mean, it's such an admirable thing. I mean, he's just so amazing the way he can move information around. So I'm really kind of trying to develop.
Right. Well, I guess the next question would be, well, how do you practice that? How do you develop that skill? You know,
yeah.
How do you teach a student that needs to do that to do it?
You know, but I've had students. I've started students thinking along these lines, and I'll make them take something very simple, and say, okay, play "There Will Never Be Another You," and you have to take I'll let him play for a second. I'll find something in his playing, so it's not something I'm dictating to him. I'll find something in his playing and say, okay, stop. Take that idea, let's go back to the top. You have to play that idea through the entire song. You know? So you have to fit that idea in somehow or another in all of those different changes. Which takes for granted that you know inside and out every single change and all of the scale chord relationships and all that stuff. All that stuff has to be so subconscious, you know, to the point that you don't really think about it anymore. Because you've got other things to think about, you know, you've got ideas to process. And if you're thinking about, okay, well, what scale goes with this chord, you're going to be in trouble. So that has to be almost automatic information.
I like also, I mean, you know, one of the things to me is with young players is, you know, they look in front of a tune like this. I mean, they're going to play from change to change to change, you know.
Right.
I noticed that when you started, I don't know if anybody noticed, but he was playing, you know, the harmonic rhythm is one chord per, you know, per bar, but he started with a 2-bar phrase. So his phrase, you know, spanned 2 bars, and then he answered himself in a 2-bar phrase, you know, which was, to me, is you know, that's more advanced, you know, than I would, you know, I mean, can you talk to that? I mean, how you hear phrases and things like that?
Well, that's interesting. I don't really know. I mean, that might be like a kind of a subconscious thing. I mean, I guess I'm trying to find ways of connecting changes, and like I've never played a tune with these changes that go like this in this order. So I'm trying to find ways of playing through one change to another, finding a way of connecting a line to another change to bring the whole tune together so it doesn't sound exactly like you're talking about, like change to change to change. Yeah,
right.
Man, you know how I work through that?
Wow.
It's funny because I just had lunch with him, Roland Guerin,
Oh, really?
and Donald Edwards. They had these tunes that were so hard, and the changes seemed somewhat. I mean, I've just never seen changes put together like that. So I remember, like, okay, man, I really want to make music on this tune, so I have to find ways of connecting this change to this change and really make some musical phrases out of it. And it was so challenging, and it was so revealing and educational at the same time. So finding situations like that, or even writing things for yourself like that, you know, where you just kind of piece together changes or something and then play over it, you know, make music out of this, you know, that's like really challenging.
Right.
But I think it also kind of goes, it's probably the culmination of, you know, all the listening, you know, that I've done over the years and how this tune sounds. It's probably bringing a certain thing to mind and all
Right,
that.
right. Something, you know, an inspiration comes to you if you hear something.
Right.
I want to kind of change the subject a little bit because I know does anybody have any questions related to what we just did? I want to make sure we you know, get to anybody's you know, satisfied curiosity while we have Brice here. And anyway, feel free to jump in at any time. But I wanted to ask you about. I'll ask the question after I answer the telephone. But you made your first record, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, it was quite a while. I mean, you know, before you made the first record. And tell us what went through. I mean, you know, you have so much experience. You play with Terrence Blanchard, you play with all the great cats and whatever. And when you make your first record, how did you think about, like, how do I want to present myself? Because you could probably do whatever you wanted, but did you have a real clear idea about what you wanted to do, like who you wanted to use, or what you wanted the record to sound like, or?
That's such a deep subject for me. I mean, I had put that record off for a really, really long time. I mean, I had Harold Batiste asking me like 15 years ago, "Are you going to do a CD?" You know, and I'm like, "No, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready." Year after year, "No, I'm not ready." You know, and in the meantime, like all these years went by, and all this music went by undocumented. You know, which, and not even necessarily for anybody in the public, but for myself, you know, I wish that I had documented some of that stuff. So, you know, by waiting so long, it became such such a more big thing to do a record finally. And finally I just had to kind of step back from it and say, okay, you know what? It doesn't even matter what it is. It doesn't even matter what it comes out to be. Of course, I'm going to try my hardest and do my best, but I just needed to see it more as a process than an end in itself. The process being, do one, learn from it, get ready for the next one, do it again, learn from it, and move on. So when I finally resolved to the fact that, okay, it's just a process, I was able just to do it and get it out of the way. And like everybody told me, once you're done with it, you're going to start thinking about the next one, you know, which is absolutely true. It's you know, so to a certain, I knew definitely who I was going to use for the record. It made sense for me to use the guys that I had done the most playing with over the past few years, which were Aaron Parks and Derek Hodge and Kendrick Scott. We had played so many gigs and so many hours together, and we saw things so musically similar that it made the most sense. To the point at which I was going to do whatever I could possibly do to make sure the date happened with those guys, because their schedules are just absolutely crazy. So I knew the musicians who I was going to use. In terms of what I was going to do with that afterwards, I had no clue. And it just ended up where I went a couple different routes and shopped it around, and I ended up liking the idea of being able to control every aspect of it. Not the least of which is monetarily. You know, if you're with a company, you know, you have to buy the CDs from them usually in order for you to sell them yourself. You know, whereas this way I had complete control. I can take the CDs to a gig and the profit is 100% mine. You know, all of the, you know, all of the.
So it's completely
all of the
self-produced.
rights,
You produce it
completely
and-
self-produced, yeah. Which is, you know, in terms of the production of the record, was a positive and a negative thing also. Because I was thinking about the production of the record, I couldn't think about my playing as much as I wanted to. I really wish in retrospect that I had had an objective person there producing it so that they could say, yo, you need to do this take again. Hey man, relax, you know, yeah, you know, why don't you guys try it this way, you know, and have an objective person there. I really would have liked that. I think the next time I'll definitely have some kind of a producer there. Maybe, you know, a few records down the line, I might consider producing it again myself when I'm more comfortable with that process as a leader. Because being a leader on a session like that is 180 degrees different than being a sideman. I mean, it's unnerving being a sideman on a major project like a Blue Note project, you know, anyway, but it's nothing like, you know, being the leader of your own project. So
yeah, that's what I said. You have two different kind of musicians, man. You have leaders and sidemen.
Yeah.
And the sideman can just sit back and wait for people to tell them what to do, or
Yeah.
wait for a phone call. But when you're the leader, you have to basically make everything happen. And you're
right.
responsible for everything that happens. So if it's a flop, and you know, you take the heat, and
Right.
if it's a success, you get all the accolades or whatever.
Right.
But, that's, you had a question?
I was going to ask, can you talk about your preparation for a project like a Blue Note recording or something where you might be coming in and someone hands you some music a few days before the session that you've never seen before, and just how you mentally and musically prepare for something like that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, the first thing that I ever did, Terrence Blanchard, he called me, and I was living here in New Orleans. He calls me and he was like, you know, hey man, I'd love for you to join the band. And I was like, you know, hell yeah. And he's like, okay, our first thing is we've got a recording session in New York in June, and it was like May, you know. And I was like, okay, cool, you know, I'm not even, it hasn't even registered yet, you know. So I get to the session, and it's like Dave Holland on bass, and like Branford Marsalis is playing saxophone on it, and I haven't seen any of the music yet, and there's like, you know, this tune, in 7, but it was a weird 7, and you know, there was this other tune. I was like, oh my God, what should I even be here, you know? And it was just like the detachment thing. I was like, well, all I can really do is the best that I can do. And so I just relaxed and did the best that I could do under those circumstances, and just played the music as best I could. And for that one, there really wasn't any kind of preparation for it, because I didn't get any music beforehand. And then the other projects that I've done with him on that level, we had already been playing a lot of the music on the road for so long. It's kind of like an artist's dream. A lot of times the process is somebody writes the music and does a record, and then they go and tour the record, you know? But the way that Terrence has been doing things, it's like we play all this music, and then we get to a certain point and we do the record. So the music is really well hashed out, and yeah, it's definitely evolved. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same thing we do with the Astro project, when we decided to, you know, because, you know, as we write new tunes for a session and we got on the road, things would just start to change and develop, you know.
Right.
Everybody just started to develop parts and ideas about what they should do in the tunes, you know, so we decided to do what you're talking about, you know, which is
play the
tunes first and then try to let them evolve and then go to the studio.
Yeah.
So you feel, you know, more comfortable with the tunes and knowing what's gonna happen.
right.
But,
Yeah, with my record, we couldn't do that because they didn't see the music until the session, or maybe I sent most of it to them maybe a couple weeks ahead, you know. And I mean, we all agreed at the end of the session, we wish we could have played, you know, a few nights in a nightclub or something before we did the sessions, so that we can really get inside the music and feel what's going on.
well, how long does it take you feel, if in a situation where you have the music, you know, like for instance, if we had to record this piece or something like that, how long would you have to internalize the piece until you feel like comfortable that you know it really well? Or, I mean, you know, at what point do you feel like, yeah, I know this just really inside and out, and, you know?
It really depends on the tune. You know, if I'm going to play. Like, do you remember when I was playing at the Windsor Court sometimes and I would play Anna Maria? I think you passed through the lobby sometimes. And I was like working on that tune or something.
Right.
You know, a tune like that is really long and it has a lot of changes in it. And man, that's a good question. I mean,
because, you know, you want to do your best, and you don't want to feel like, oh man, I wish I had more time to spend with this tune, and you know, I mean, it's probably different for everybody's different, you know.
Yeah.
And probably some people assimilate things faster.
right.
Like, you know, we had Davey Mooney in here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
He was, you know, telling us how, you know, people in New York, man, you just put something in front of them, doesn't matter how difficult it is, they just read it down.
Right.
This time I was thinking that, well, you know, is the object to like get your reading to the point where you can just, I mean, did they feel satisfied with being able to read the music, or would they have played it better if they had a chance to like play it on the road for a couple of weeks or something, or, you know,
Right.
whatever, you know what
I mean, the thing about reading versus actually internalizing a piece of music is you can see the bigger picture after you've internalized it. You know,
Right.
you can create the continuity that you're looking for by internalizing it. And so, yeah, it just really would depend on the tune, you know, how fast you can internalize it. But, you know, I would want to memorize it. Like a tune like this, I would probably sit here for, you know, half an hour or an hour and have it memorized. And I'm kind of like a visual person where, like, I think I play certain tunes, it's like standards, and like, you say, okay, let's play Take the A Train. And a page pops up in my head that looks like the real book page that I saw the first time I learned that song. Like, it's there, I see the whole thing, you know? And I think I probably always will. It just pops up there. So, I mean, like, I'll be looking at this, and this is the chart I will see as I'm playing this song, even if it's computer printed out. This one's cool because it's got, like, human stuff on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've written on it and stuff, which gives it a lot of character and stuff, you know? So, but I would, you know, learn the melody and all the changes and everything and still see this page. So as I'm playing it, it'll be there, and hopefully I can kind of forget about it. Like if I need to, I can look up, oh yeah, there, you know what I mean? It's like kind of sitting in my head like that, but I can get to the point at which I can just remember it's up there, but I'm like trying to deal with musical stuff that's happening behind. You know what I mean? So,
Well, that's true. I mean, when you play in concert like with parents or whatever, you really use music. You know, or are you all reading music or?
No, we never read.
Yeah, that's right. So how long? So you have to basically memorize. Do you feel like at the point that you memorize the tune, you feel like you've internalized it pretty much?
No.
No.
No. I mean, I can memorize a tune and still feel like, you know, it's not in me yet. Yeah. And that, you know, that can really take some time depending on the difficulty level of the tune. We've been playing one of Walter Smith's songs with Terrence that is just stupid hard. And, you know, I still see the page in front of me because I'm just hanging on for dear life, you know, and at the same time just trying to listen and make some music. So, yeah, sometimes it can take some serious time to internalize something. Yeah.
Questions?
So when you mean by memorize, you mean like memorize all the changes, but you don't have like what you said, the big picture figured out yet, maybe? Like you'll know where you are, but you can't really, you know, play it to your...
I think it's something about control. Like I'm kind of a control freak. I mean, I'm probably with a lot of things, but like with music, like if there's something I don't understand, I'm just going to feel uncomfortable until I understand it. So if I've internalized the song, to be able to control the direction of wherever we're going to go musically, then I would feel like I can really, then I've internalized a tune, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like control. Once I feel like I have control over a song, Matt, it's not controlling me. Basically, that's probably what it is. I hate it when music controls me. I mean, I like to go along with the flow of the music. You know, I like to be taken in the music and be a part of the flow of the music. But I hate it when it controls me. You know, that's when those are the days when you're just like, oh God, I can't play. You know, oh, I can't get to this, I can't get to that. You know, you feel like you're just not in the flow of whatever the music is doing. So, yeah. Definitely control freak.
Well, look, we should probably think about wrapping this up. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you're doing now in terms of, you know, your educational endeavors, and I also, you know, you're living in Arizona, and I just wonder now that are you gonna attempt to book tours for yourself, or I mean, to promote your record, and talk a little bit about the difficulties of that. I mean, do you have an agent, or how, you know, and living in Arizona, does that pose a problem with travel, and or you know, there's probably not a lot of jazz clubs. Are there a lot of opportunities to play there?
No, in Tucson there are very few opportunities for me to play. In Phoenix there are a little bit more opportunities, and sometimes I go up there to do things. Steve, you mentioned the educational thing. In Tucson, I have a school that I opened up with two partners that we just renamed to the Tucson Community Music School. This last year, we had about 250 students in our program, and we had 11 big bands and 18 combos, and we had 2 vocal jazz groups, and we just started jazz strings, and we have music technology, and we have all this stuff. So it's like a real school, an extracurricular school. So that's really taking up a lot of my time with administration and other stuff. So a lot of times I feel like I can't be as much of a musician as I want to be. And that's what makes me work harder. I sometimes feel like I have like 3 things happening. You talk about spinning plates, you know, I feel like the same sometimes. I have the school and I'm touring with Terrence, and then, you know, I have this personal thing of I just put out this record, and I've had a lot of people ask me, are you going to tour the record? At this point, I can't do that. I just don't have the time and to devote to doing something like that. But I have made contacts over the years at certain jazz clubs, and and places throughout the country that, you know, said, when you get your product, let me know, I'll bring you into the club and that kind of thing. And those kind of relationships are the most important relationships that you guys can create, you know, as you're going along in your school career. Burning bridges is just so dangerous on so many levels, you know. Maintain your relationships, you know. Relationships are so important. It's like you meet this guy over here, or you meet a radio station person, you know, get their card and file that sucker away. So when you're ready to put out your product, you know, you've got to be sending stuff to radio stations, and you've got to be contacting all these people. I mean, it's a whole nother world, the music business, you know. Many artists just leave it to somebody else, and that's, to me, if I could, I would, you know, because it's just a whole business and whole thing unto its own. But relationships are super, super important. Promoters and radio station owners and all those, you know, program directors for radio stations and that kind of thing.
I wanted to ask you, Brice, you have like a distinctive like motion between your notes. I mean the way you phrase. I mean through your your swinging of your notes compared to like other saxophonists like Chris Waters. Did you like specifically work on your own way of the motion between your notes somehow?
It's probably the culmination of everybody I've listened to up till now, you know, and everybody that I've played with probably, you know. I mean, I would really attribute a huge chunk of my playing to Nicholas Payton, you know. I mean, just playing next to him on a regular basis, you know, when we lived in New Orleans, I mean, we just play gigs around town at Cafe Brazil and Snug Harbor and just all kinds of places, making no money, you know. I mean, God, I'm standing next to Nicholas Payton. And, you know, just every day I would just pick up so much information, you know, lines that he would play through changes, or, you know, ways he would play certain phrases. So I really owe a lot to Nicholas, you know, a lot of information. But I would say, you know, it's probably just a culmination of everything. I mean, I remember, like, you know, being in school and just being like, oh, you know, I want to develop my own sound, you know. And I think we all are striving for that, but it's not necessarily something that can be forced, but something that you can let develop, kind of let yourself through your music. And for some of us, it takes a lot longer than others. I don't know, I would love to hear someone speak on that, on developing your sound, because I don't know how to do it. I really don't. I'm just like, I'm almost like stepping back and just letting stuff happen, and just, you know, I practice and learn this from this guy and this from this guy, and hopefully at the end, maybe I'll have my sound. But playing other people's original music that you have no reference for can really help you do that. If you're playing this tune, you've never heard this tune in your life, you have no reference for how it's supposed to sound. And so all you can do is just play you know what I mean? You might try to reference this, but I think that's the biggest argument for writing and composing, and that you're committing something to paper that's somewhere inside of you, right? And so through committing to tune after tune after tune, you're putting yourself on paper and you're defining who you are as well as who you're not. And it's going to help your voice come out even when you play, you know. I don't know.
Since we're celebrating our 20th anniversary of Jazz at the Sandbar, and you were one of the first students in the Jazz Studies program, probably played maybe one of the first Jazz at the Sandbar. Can you tell us a little bit about the early days at UNO and what it was like?
Wow. Yeah. God, it was so much fun. I spent hours right here in this room. Like, I think there were only 9 of us in the program in the very beginning.
Glenn Patchy was
Glenn Patchy was here. David Morgan was here. Chris Thomas was here. Martin Butler was here. Jeff Clapp.
Right.
a lot of guys that are still around, you know. Chris Thomas is now playing with Brian Blade, Brian Blade Fellowship. Brian Blade was here in those early days for a couple semesters too. Jeremy Davenport was here, and Mark Sturbank was here. Yeah, a lot of different guys. So I think there were like 9 of us in the beginning, and we just did a lot of playing. I mean, the way the school was structured back then was like really loose. So we we just played a lot of tunes and just figured out stuff from each other and just fed each other information and inspiration and kind of found our way through.
Oh.
Then this cat started coming around and like laying it down.
Yeah.
This is what y'all need to be dealing with.
Probably the uncoordinated chess.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, this was a great place. I mean, I really cherish my years here in the school and in my developing years there in the city. I mean, this is just a very, very unique place, very special. You also I mean, you're all lucky to be here, for sure.
Well, we're lucky to have Brice. I'm going to hand for Brice. I tell you that he's playing tonight at Jazz at the Sandbar, you know, and I forgot the groups that are playing. I think UNO's playing, and
Yeah.
Brian Seaver's group is playing tonight. So.
Yeah.
And it's in the Homer Hit Center, which is a new place for us this semester.
Well, where is that?
It's if you look up and you see the smokestack, that's where it is.
Oh, way back there on the back.
Right in the back, you know.
Oh.
Very nice, overlooks the lake. It's really cool, you know, and
Also, from 6:15 until 7, your teacher Harold Baptiste will be talking about the early days of the Jazz Studies program and signing copies of his new book. We'll have some munchies, so if you want to come a little early, we'll see you then.
fantastic.
Great.
Brice Winston.
Thank you.